Have you ever thought about how the universe might be trying to tell us something? Like it's whispering secrets and we just need to figure out how to listen.
Yeah, I like that.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty amazing. It's a mystery that's both scientific and spiritual. We're going to be looking at the connection between Albert Einstein, the father of modern physics,
Right.
and the ancient wisdom of Buddhism.
Wow. That is fascinating. I mean, those two worlds, science and spirituality, people usually think they're total opposites. But, when you really look at Einstein's life and his work,
Yeah.
you actually start to see some surprising parallels.
We're really lucky to have access to some of Einstein's writings and letters, stuff that was discovered at Princeton.
Oh, wow.
It gives us a really unique look into how his mind worked.
I bet.
What we found is honestly really intriguing.
So what's the big takeaway from all this?
Well, it seems like Einstein didn't just admire Buddhism, like in a vague, philosophical way. It looks like he actually saw it as a system of thought that was super compatible with his own scientific discoveries.
That's wild. What was it about Buddhism that he found so compelling?
Let's break that down. What specifically about Buddhism did Einstein find so interesting?
One of the key things was how Buddhism goes beyond the idea of a personal God.
Okay.
So instead of a deity who's separate from everything, Buddhism is all about the interconnectedness of, everything. And this idea, it really clicked with Einstein's own understanding of the cosmos as this unified whole governed by universal laws.
So just to be clear, we're not saying Einstein converted to Buddhism or anything like that.
No, not at all. He never formally practiced Buddhism or anything.
Right.
But his writings show a deep respect for its core principles.
Okay.
For example, he praised Buddhism because it rejects rigid dogmas
Interesting.
and because it embraces both the natural and the spiritual, seeing them as a unified whole.
And there's that famous quote where Einstein called Buddhism a cosmic religion for the future. That's a pretty bold statement coming from a scientist, wouldn't you say?
Totally. And it shows just how deeply his scientific understanding of the universe shaped his whole worldview.
Yeah.
It's almost as if his exploration of the cosmos through physics brought him to the same conclusions that Buddhists reached through centuries of, introspection and meditation.
I'm starting to see how it all connects. It's like Einstein was using math to express what Buddhist masters had already articulated through their spiritual practices.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And the connection gets even clearer when we look at specific examples of how Einstein's scientific thinking actually mirrored Buddhist concepts.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Take the Buddhist concept of sunyata, which means emptiness.
Okay, emptiness. That's a bit abstract.
I know, right?
How does that relate to Einstein's physics?
So in Buddhism, sunyata refers to the idea that nothing truly has a fixed, independent existence. Everything is impermanent, connected to everything else, and constantly in a state of change.
Okay, so far so good.
It might sound a bit paradoxical,
Yeah, I'd see that.
but let's think about a seemingly solid object, something like, a wooden table.
Okay, a table. We see it as solid, right?
Exactly.
It's got a definite shape. It takes up space.
Right. But scientifically speaking, that table is made up of atoms,
Yeah.
which are mostly, get this, empty space. And those atoms, they're constantly moving, vibrating, interacting with their surroundings. The idea of tableness, that's just a temporary label we slap onto this collection of constantly changing stuff.
So you're saying our perception of the table as this solid, independent thing is kind of an illusion.
Well, in a way, yeah. And this aligns perfectly with how Einstein understood the universe as this dynamic, interconnected web of energy.
And that's where his famous equation comes in, right? EMC-OR.
You got it. EMC-Proc beautifully demonstrates this.
EMC-OR, everyone's heard of it.
Right.
But to be honest, I'm not sure I totally get what it means.
It basically tells us that matter and energy, they're like two sides of the same coin. They're interchangeable. Even something that seems totally solid, like matter, is really just energy in a specific form. It can transform, change, even disappear completely.
Wow.
And that really reinforces the Buddhist concept of impermanence.
I see it now. It's like Einstein was unlocking the universe's secrets through physics, while Buddha had already mapped out the terrain through a totally different path.
That's a great way to think about it. And it highlights how these two seemingly different worlds, they actually converge. They both point towards a deeper understanding of reality, one that challenges how we usually see things and invites us to see the world in a whole new light.
This is blowing my mind.
I know, right? It's pretty amazing. And for Einstein, this idea of interconnectedness, it wasn't just some theory.
Right.
It really affected how he saw things ethically, especially with the whole atomic weapons situation.
Yeah, that's true. Even though Einstein played a part in developing the atomic bomb, he became a huge advocate for peace and getting rid of nuclear weapons altogether.
Exactly, because he understood how everything is connected. He saw just how dangerous those weapons were.
Right.
He knew using them would be devastating, not just for the people directly affected, but for everyone in the whole planet.
It's like his scientific understanding really fueled his moral compass. He could see how what we do, even things that seem isolated, can have a ripple effect on everything else.
Exactly. And this aligns perfectly with the Buddhist principle of nonviolence, the idea that harming others is ultimately harming ourselves because we're all part of the same web of life.
We actually have a quote from Einstein here that speaks to this perfectly.
Oh, let's hear it.
A human being is a part of the whole called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty.
Wow, that's powerful stuff.
It really is.
He's basically saying that our sense of being separate from each other and from nature, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
It's a delusion that causes suffering.
And he's arguing that this delusion traps us in a cycle of self-centeredness, right?
Yeah.
It keeps us from seeing the bigger picture and doing things that benefit everyone.
Precisely. He knew that to overcome this illusion, we need to cultivate compassion, to expand our sense of self, to include everyone and everything.
Right.
And this echoes the Buddhist emphasis on developing loving kindness and compassion as a path to liberation from suffering.
So both Einstein and Buddhist teachings stress the importance of moving past our limited sense of self and recognizing that everything's interconnected.
Yes, and they also share another fascinating parallel. The idea that our perception of reality is, in a sense, an illusion.
Right, we touched on this earlier with the concept of Maya in Buddhism.
Exactly. But let's dive a little deeper.
Okay, I'm game.
What does it actually mean to say our perception of reality is an illusion?
Well, as I understand it, it means that our senses don't give us the full picture, and often what we see is distorted.
Okay.
We see things as solid and separate, but science is showing us that ultimately, everything is energy in a constant state of flux.
Exactly. Think about it. Our brains are bombarded with sensory input all the time. Sights, sounds, smells, textures.
Right.
But they have to filter and interpret all that input to make sense of the world.
So our brains are essentially constructing reality, not just recording it objectively.
Precisely. And this construction process is shaped by our past experiences, our beliefs, our expectations, meaning what we perceive as reality is really a highly subjective interpretation of the sensory data we receive.
And this is where Einstein's work comes in, right? His theories of relativity challenged our conventional notions of time and space, showing that they're not absolute but relative to the observer.
Exactly. Einstein proved that time isn't this rigid, linear thing like we experience it.
Yeah.
It can speed up or slow down depending on things like gravity and velocity, and even space itself can bend and warp. These insights blew apart the Newtonian view of a fixed and objective universe.
So it's not just about our subjective interpretations. You're saying the very fabric of reality is more fluid and malleable than we think.
That's right. And this fluidity aligns with the Buddhist concept of impermanence. The understanding that everything is in a constant state of change, nothing stays the same.
This is where it gets mind-blowing.
I know, right?
We're talking about modern physics and ancient spiritual teachings converging on a fundamental truth about reality.
And this convergence has huge implications for how we understand ourselves and our place in the universe.
Right.
It challenges us to question our assumptions about the world and be open to new ways of seeing things.
It makes you wonder if Einstein, with his revolutionary ideas about space, time, and reality, was tapping into the same insights that Buddhist practitioners have been exploring for centuries through meditation and contemplation.
That's a great question, and it speaks to the power of both scientific inquiry and spiritual practice to reveal deeper truths about existence.
This deep dive has been so illuminating so far.
It really has.
Before we continue exploring this incredible connection between Einstein and Buddhism, I want to remind our viewers to like this video and subscribe to our channel.
Yes, your support helps us keep exploring these fascinating topics and bringing you new insights.
So where were we?
We were talking about how Einstein and Buddhist thought converge on the idea that our perception of reality is limited and that the universe is far more fluid and interconnected than we usually realize.
Right, and this leads us to another fascinating parallel: the role of contemplation in both scientific discovery and spiritual insight.
Einstein was famous for his thought experiments, where he'd imagine himself in different situations to test the implications of his theories.
Like that famous one where he imagined chasing a beam of light.
Exactly. These thought experiments were essentially a form of deep contemplation, not that different from the meditative practices used in Buddhism to cultivate insight and wisdom.
So both Einstein and Buddhist practitioners recognize the power of quieting the mind to allow deeper truths to emerge.
Absolutely, and it's not just some abstract concept.
Right.
Modern neuroscience is showing us how meditation can actually change brain activity in ways that promote focus, clarity, and insight.
It's incredible how science is catching up to what contemplative traditions have known for centuries. But this connection between Einstein and Buddhism goes even deeper. He developed this concept of cosmic religious feeling. You were saying something about Einstein's cosmic religious feeling.
Oh, yeah.
What did he mean by that?
That's a pretty cool idea. For Einstein, this cosmic religious feeling, it wasn't about believing in a personal God or following any specific religious rules.
Yeah.
It was more about this profound sense of awe and wonder when he looked at the universe and saw how intricate and harmonious everything was.
So more like a deep reverence for the universe and its mysteries.
Exactly. Einstein thought that trying to understand science, that was a deeply spiritual thing. He once said, "The most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious. It is the fundamental emotion that stands at the cradle of true art and true science." To him, that feeling of mystery, it wasn't something to be afraid of or try to explain away. It was actually the very source of our curiosity, what makes us want to figure out the universe and where we sit in.
That idea of finding the spiritual and the scientific, that resonates with Buddhism too, right?
Totally. Buddhism talks about how everything's connected and how nothing lasts forever. And that can give you a sense of awe and wonder, kind of like what Einstein was describing with this cosmic religious feeling.
I see that.
Both perspectives are telling us to look past our own limited egocentric view and to appreciate how vast and mysterious everything really is.
It's amazing how science and spiritual practice, two things that seem totally different, can lead to such similar insights.
Right. It's not just Buddhism either. Einstein's cosmic religious feeling, it's similar to some of the ideas of Baruch Spinoza. Yeah, Einstein was a big fan of his. Spinoza believed that God and nature were basically the same thing, no separation between the spiritual and the material.
So here's Einstein, this genius physicist, finding common ground with ancient Buddhist teachings, and a philosopher from the 1600s, all three of them talking about a reality that's way bigger than how we usually think about things.
Exactly. It makes you wonder if this feeling of awe, this wonder at the universe, is a fundamental human experience, something we can access in different ways.
That's a really interesting thought.
And what's even cooler is that modern science is finding evidence that supports these old wisdom traditions. Take quantum entanglement, for example.
Okay.
Particles can be linked no matter how far apart they are, almost like they're all part of this big unified field.
Right.
Or think about the observer effect in quantum mechanics. Just by observing something, we can change how particles behave. That suggests a strong connection between consciousness and the physical world.
Wow.
These discoveries challenge our old ideas about a separate, objective universe. They're pointing towards something more interconnected, more mysterious, something that aligns with Buddhist teachings and Einstein's cosmic religious feeling.
It's almost like science is finally catching up with what mystics and contemplatives have been saying for ages.
Yeah.
That we're all part of something much bigger and more interconnected than we can even imagine.
And that realization changes everything. It changes how we live our lives, how we treat each other, how we take care of the planet. If we're all connected, our actions have a ripple effect on everything else.
Our choices matter. We have a responsibility to act in ways that benefit everyone, not just ourselves.
Exactly. And that takes us back to Einstein's call for a radical transformation of our modes of thinking. He knew that the way we see the world now, based on separation, competition, always wanting more, it's not going to work in the long run.
We need a new way of thinking, one that's based on connection, compassion, and a deep respect for all life.
You got it. And that's the real legacy of both Einstein's scientific brilliance and the timeless wisdom of Buddhist teachings, a call to wake up and see ourselves and the universe in a deeper way, an invitation to live with more wisdom, compassion, and responsibility.
This deep dive has been an incredible journey. We explored this unexpected connection between Einstein's groundbreaking physics and the deep insights of Buddhism. We found surprising parallels and mind-blowing ideas along the way.
And we saw how these two worlds that seem so different actually come together to give us a deeper understanding of reality, one that emphasizes interconnectedness, the fact that everything is always changing, and the sheer mystery of existence.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more explorations of the connections between science, philosophy, and spirituality.
And remember, there are 2 videos on your screen right now that can take you even deeper into the mysteries of the universe. Click on one and keep exploring.
Until next time, keep diving deep.